Welcome back to Quick Bits for October 7th. Are the Menendez brothers getting out of prison soon? What is going on with all of the Diddy stuff? Most of that's going to be in the Emily show this week. There are still baby reindeer updates, so you want to make sure you didn't miss last week's podcast. And there is a plea in the death of Matthew Perry, and we found out how much that special prosecutor in the Karen Reed case is going to be making. So let's get into it. I'm legal analyst Emily D. Baker. This is the Quick Bits, where I break down just the main points of the pop culture and entertainment cases I'm currently covering on YouTube and the Emily Show podcast. Let's get into it. First, as I am recording this before I go travel with the family for fall break, it seems that Tupac's family have hired Alex Spiro, the fiery attorney from the Alec Baldwin Rust case, and he is tasked with investigating whether or not Diddy is linked to the death of Tupac. I mean, all they need to go do is talk to Keffe, who's going to be standing trial for the shooting death of Tupac Shakur in 1996. It will be very interesting to see where this goes. And I have mentioned multiple times that a lot of this is lined out in the book of Keffe. Again, how much of that is true is going to be hard to ascertain at this point because most of the people involved the night that Tupac was shot and killed are either deceased or in prison. And by that, I mean, Keffe has said the only people that were there that night that are still living is him and Suge Knight, who is in prison. I don't know if Suge's going to say shit about any of this, but maybe now that Diddy's in custody, he will. I mean, he's got a podcast that he calls out from custody to do, so who knows what Suge might have to say. But with all of this, it will be very interesting now that there are private attorneys looking into areas that many of us thought were stones that would no longer be unearthed. He's going to be standing trial in November in Nevada. So we're going to see what happens when Keffe goes to trial, if that trial goes forward on time. And it will be very interesting to see what Spiro turns up in New York now that Diddy is in custody and we are seeing a flood of new allegations. More of that will be broken down in the Emily show this week on Wednesday because a lot is happening both in court and out of court with regard to Diddy. Then in the Karen Reed case, you might remember me talking about the fact that a special prosecutor has been brought in to head the prosecution team. This is somebody who works as a defense attorney, has also worked in the past as a prosecutor, and most notably defended Whitey Bulger when he went to trial in Massachusetts. And we have learned through a public records request exactly how much Hank Brennan will be getting paid by the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office. As reported by CBS, the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office, and this is all public information and publicly accessible, they spend about $9 million a year in salaries for their entire district attorney's office, if that helps with context. And through this public records request, we are learning that he will be paid up to $75,000 for the prosecution of Karen Reed. The second round, his rate is set at $250 per hour, which will be on the lower side of a defense attorney with his commensurate experience, probably less than Karen Reed is paying her attorneys hourly. And that if the amount is to go over that, there will need to be a new contract or an addendum to this contract. But I thought it was interesting. The more you know when it comes to special prosecutors, and boy, have we talked about special prosecutors quite a lot lately, because Carrie Morrissey has been up to all of the things. And last week, Judge Summer said a big nope to Hannah Gutierrez and denied her motion for a new trial, denied her motion to dismiss, and denied her motion for immediate release. But we haven't seen a hearing yet on the Baldwin motions where Carrie Morrissey is asking for the judge to reconsider that dismissal. For those of you that have been following the Sarah Boone case, you are well familiar. For those of you that have not, she is accused of killing her boyfriend by leaving him zipped into a suitcase that she zipped him into. She said they were drinking and playing a game of hide and seek, but police found a video on her phone that seems to indicate this went beyond joking, as the victim, her boyfriend, George Torres, was begging for her to release him and saying that he couldn't breathe. She was subsequently arrested in 2020 and has been pending trial since then. She's gone through 8 court-appointed attorneys before the court deemed that she was going to have to represent herself because she was just not going to play well with others. And a private defense attorney swooped in and took the case after Sarah Boone wrote an advertisement that we will talk more about as this trial gets underway. The court recently denied a significant motion to suppress her statement to police, which is going to contradict what her new attorneys want to present as a battered spouse defense. This police interview contradicts that defense almost entirely. We have not seen if the defense is going to make a motion to continue. Jury selection is supposed to start October 7th, but I imagine the defense is going to be asking for a little bit more time, and it's unlikely the judge is going to grant it. So after fall break on October 14th, I will begin with opening statements and catching up to live trial, because this is a defendant who I very much think will take the stand in her own defense, and that will be very interesting. So stay tuned in the Law Nerd app so you know when I am going gavel to gavel. In last week's podcast, we talked about all of the updates in the litigation regarding Baby Reindeer, which recently won Emmys, is a series on Netflix where Netflix lost their anti-slap motion. And we saw very quickly a filing where the parties agreed on a mediator. Well, though this case might be headed towards mediation, it's also headed towards appeal because Netflix filed their notice of appeal to the Ninth Circuit on the denial of that anti-slap motion. They did win quite a lot of their motion to dismiss that pared the case down to defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress, but they want that anti-slap motion granted because it will cut off this litigation entirely and award them attorney's fees. So defendant Netflix is going to take it up on appeal. When the appellate brief is filed, I will be covering it. And in the headlines, you may have been seeing that one of the doctors in the Matthew Perry case has pled guilty. This is the doctor we knew was going to plea. He took a plea deal before his case even went to court. It was a written plea deal. He just went into court to formalize that plea deal. So it is nothing out of the ordinary, and it hasn't been sentenced yet. This is just the entry of the plea. So as that case moves along and the 2 individuals that have not taken plea deals start moving through the system, we will be covering that a bit more. And speaking of cases ripped from the headlines, you may be familiar with the Menendez Brothers prosecution. They went to trial twice in the 90s, eventually being convicted after their second trial in 1996 of the murder of their mother and father in their Beverly Hills home in 1989. New evidence has come to light, and a swath of new docuseries have brought some of that new evidence to light. Well, on Thursday, October 3rd, 2024, District Attorney of Los Angeles, George Gascon, held a press conference to say that they are evaluating whether or not the Menendez brothers should get a new trial based on this after-discovered evidence, or if they should be resentenced. Well, I mean, Kim Kardashian has also been chiming in on this case and said that she thinks the Menendez brothers should be released. What's interesting is Netflix is dropping another docuseries about this case on October 7th, the day that this episode goes up, and that is called The Menendez Brothers, and it features Lyle and Erik Menendez sharing their story from prison and their fight on their habeas petition, showing that there is new evidence. Some of that new evidence came up in the Menendez and Menudo Boys Betrayed series that is on Peacock. And there is discussion of evidence that came forward because all of this has been back into the media. It seems to me, based on the district attorney's statement, that resentencing is more likely. The Menendez brothers will be back in court at the end of November on that habeas petition. The district attorney's office of Los Angeles has resentenced, Gascon said, over 300 individuals in the last 4 years. And it seems to me, based on current office policies, that that is the more likely result. So I will be keeping an eye on what is going on in the Menendez brothers case. This was one of the first big televised trials that I remember, but the first trial resulted in a hung jury. The second trial resulted in a lot of information about abuse that the boys said they experienced at the hands of their father being kept out. And now there is more evidence coming forward supporting their statements. So it seems that after 35 years in prison, a resentencing is the most likely outcome here if the district attorney's office finds this new evidence to support claims that both brothers made during their trials and in all subsequent statements about the case. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on that one. And yes, it is possible after a sentencing, even 35 years ago, for new evidence to change the way a case is sentenced. We have seen many saying that they think the Menendez brothers will be resentenced and released from prison by the end of this year. I want to know your thoughts on that. And if you're keeping an eye on that story and would like me to dive deeper into what habeas petitions mean, how after discovered evidence, even this many years later, comes into play, we can absolutely talk about it. And if you didn't catch my episode where I talked about the judge's ruling in the Hannah Gutierrez case, that case breaks down the law on after discovered evidence in New Mexico. But the laws, though different across the country, a lot of the core components are the same as to what the courts evaluate when evidence comes up after trial. Of course, in this case, this is evidence being brought to the prosecution, not evidence like in the Gutierrez case that the prosecution had and didn't turn over. So in that, the situation is different. We'll see what the habeas unit of the district attorney's office does, and I'm sure we will see George Gascon giving another press conference when the decision is made. And with all of that, I hope you are enjoying this format of the Quick Bits, keeping you in the loop on all the legal stories that we are not deep diving at the moment or have not had a chance to deep dive. As always, let me know in the comments or on social what you think we should be deep diving from these Quick Bits episodes. And Law Nerd, thank you for being here. I will see you in the next one. For deep dives into the stories that I covered here, you can find them on my YouTube channel at The Emily D. Baker and The Emily Show podcast. I stream every Tuesday and Thursday. The podcast goes live on Wednesdays. And if you want to stay in the loop with everything I'm doing, receive the fastest notifications out there, and get more Law Nerd community, join me at lawnerdapp.com, our free app for iOS and Android.